You felt this punishment. Today, maybe this week. That silence after you sent a message and nobody answered. That room you walked into where the conversation just stopped. That group chat that quietly stopped, including you. You called it awkward. You called it anxiety. You called it being too sensitive. It's none of those things. It's a 300,000-year-old execution method, and it's still running inside your brain right now. If you break the law today, the state removes you. A wall, a cell, a door that locks from the outside. Simple, physical, someone else's job. Ancient humans had none of that. No police, no courts, no jail cell to throw a criminal into. For roughly 290,000 years, humans lived in bands of 20 to 50 people, and every single one of those people depended on every other one to survive. You couldn't hunt alone. You couldn't defend the camp alone. You couldn't raise a child alone. The group wasn't a preference. It was oxygen. So when someone broke the rules, stole food, hurt another member, hoarded, bullied, betrayed the group to outsiders, the band couldn't just lock them in a cage. There was no cage. There was no spare food to feed a prisoner through a hard winter. They needed a system that punished without walls. And what they built was quieter than a prison, and it hit harder than anything physical ever could. Stage 1, gossip. Not the petty kind, the functional kind. In a band with no writing, no contracts, no police reports, gossip was the only database anyone had. It tracked who shared and who hoarded, who could be trusted and who couldn't. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar has even argued language itself may have evolved largely to do this job, to let a social animal track a group too large to monitor by sight alone. If you stepped out of line, people talk. Not always behind your back, often right in front of you, wrapped in a joke, a pointed comment, a song. The Kungsan of the Kalahari still do this today. If someone gets arrogant or selfish, the group composes a mocking song about them by name and sings it at the next gathering. Everyone joins in. No one touches you. Your entire social world just tells you, publicly and rhythmically, that you're out of line. Think about what that actually does to a person who has nowhere else to go. 30 people who keep you alive, laughing at your worst behavior, with no other camp down the road to run to. For most people, that was enough. Behavior corrected, story over. But if it wasn't enough, the group climbed a rung. Direct confrontation. The Inuit of the Arctic had something called a song duel. Two people in conflict would stand before the whole camp and trade insults in verse, exposing secrets, mocking each other, while the group decided the winner by consensus. It wasn't really about who was more clever. It was about who the group sided with. Lose that, and you didn't just lose an argument, you lost the invisible currency that kept you fed and protected. And notice something anthropologist Christopher Bohm found across dozens of these societies. The people targeted by all this pressure were rarely the weak. They were the strong, the bullies, the ones trying to dominate. Bohm called it a reverse dominance hierarchy, the many at the bottom using gossip and ridicule and the threat of collective action, controlling the few who tried to rise above everyone else. No constitution, no police. It ran for a few 100,000 years anyway. If that still didn't work, the group had one more option before violence, and it was the most terrifying one they had. Ostracism. Total, silent, social death. The Yagan of Tierra del Fuego practiced this completely. No announcement, no drama. The group simply stopped seeing you. No eye contact, no shared food. No one sleeping near you for warmth. No one watching your back on a hunt. You were still standing there, breathing, walking around the camp, and you had ceased to exist. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This wasn't just cruelty. It was a signal, broadcast to everyone else watching. Anthropologist Richard Sosis studied this pattern across religious communities and found the same logic everywhere. The costlier and more visible the punishment, the stronger the warning to everyone else. This is what happens if you break the contract. Maximize the signal, maximize the visibility, and your brain does not treat the signal as symbolic. In 2003, researcher Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA put people in an fMRI scanner and had them play a simple game of digital catch with two other players. Partway through, the other two stopped throwing to the subject, just excluded them. Nothing else happened. No pain, no danger, no real loss of anything. The subject said it hurt, physically hurt, and the scans backed it up. The anterior cingulate cortex, the exact brain region that lights up when you break a bone or burn your hand, activated the same way it does with real physical injury. Social rejection and physical injury run on the same neural circuit. Your brain does not distinguish between being punched and being ignored, which tells you exactly why ostracism worked as punishment for 290,000 years and why the group only reached for violence when everything else had already failed. Exile, when it happened, was rarely a clean sentence. It was closer to a slow, deliberate withdrawal of everything keeping you alive, followed by silence about what happened next. No coordinated hunting, no help if you fell sick, no fire to sleep beside while predators moved in the dark. Some anthropologists describe it less as a punishment and more as a probationary death sentence. The group wasn't trying to kill you. They were simply taking back what had never belonged to you by right in the first place. Protection, food, a place by the fire. The wilderness handled the rest. And execution, the final rung, existed. But it was rare and it was engineered to avoid a very specific danger: revenge. If one person killed the offender, that offender's family might retaliate and a blood feud could tear the entire band apart for generations. So in documented cases among groups like the Hadza and the Kungsan, when a chronically violent person had to be killed, the act was often done by consensus, with the responsibility spread across many hands or handed to a close relative of the offender. No single person to blame meant no single target for vengeance. It wasn't a murder. It was a collective judgment, and the people who carried it out reliably described grief, not satisfaction. We had no other choice. So what happened to all of this. About 10,000 years ago, humans started farming. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. And the entire system broke because it only works at small scale. A stranger doesn't care that you've been shamed. A crowd doesn't notice if you've been excluded. You can't socially kill someone in a city of thousands. There's always another street, another group, another fire that doesn't know your history. So the state took over. And the state doesn't do subtle. It does walls, bars, and solitary confinement, which, by the way, is really just ostracism rediscovered by people who never understood why it worked. It's not the loss of freedom that breaks a person in solitary. It's the loss of social visibility. Your brain registers it exactly the way your ancestors' brain registered being walked away from at the fire as dying. And you are still running that same software right now. That tight feeling in your chest when a message goes unanswered. The sting when a room doesn't notice you walked in. The specific, nauseating dread of being talked about behind your back. None of that is a personality flaw. It's a 300,000-year-old alarm system. Still fully operational, going off because it was built for a world with no strangers and no way out. Here's the cruelest part of the mismatch. In the old system, the punishment had an ending. The ridicule song finished and the person was let back in. The exile who changed could sometimes return. The point was never to destroy someone. It was to correct them and then restore them. Modern punishment often has no re-entry at all. A canceled reputation. A prison sentence that follows you for life. A phone that stays silent. The alarm keeps screaming, but there's no signal telling your nervous system the danger has passed. Because in a world of strangers, it often never fully does. You're exiled from a fire that no longer physically exists, and the part of your brain built to track it has no idea the fire's gone. The next time exclusion makes your stomach drop over something that rationally shouldn't matter this much, a slow reply, a quiet group chat, a room that didn't turn when you walked in, you'll know exactly what's happening. That's not weakness. That's the oldest justice system humans ever built, still quietly running inside you, waiting for a fire that isn't there anymore. If stories like this, the hidden mechanics of how ancient humans actually lived, thought, and survived, are what you're here for, subscribe. There's a lot more buried in this history than most people ever get told.